We're having a little cycle in the forest. You going to where the woodland elves are? Yeah, I'm quite excited because this evening I'm going to be watching the SpaceX launch, the first crewed SpaceX launch ever. And hopefully I'm going to be sharing that excitement with Jasper and with you. Although we'll see, because, you know, it's a rocket launch, so the weather could easily stop play, and that's assuming everything else is just fine. So while Jasper is exploring this log here, I'm going to double check and find out if there's been any kind of a weather update. I find Twitter is the best place to find out what's going on. What do we got here? Targeting 4:33 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time today. Teams are closely monitoring launch and downrange weather. Alright, so we don't really know. It's not off yet. Helmet, Jasper! Jasper, helmet! That said, it would be much better from a general public point of view if it actually went ahead when it was supposed to go ahead. Just from a publicity standpoint, everyone's all G'd up for it today. Fingers crossed on that weather. Oh, you're just gonna go without me? Kids, this is a real sort of coming of age moment for SpaceX, because they're hitting the big time. You know, this is prime time TV space travel, and at the moment it's basically all SpaceX and NASA. So it's great for them. Jasper's hit the horizon. I've got to go. You excited about the SpaceX launch tonight, Jasper?
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be a good treat for you, because you'll get to stay up a little bit later than normal. Unfortunately, my hay fever is really bad today, so I'm hoping that's not going to get in the way. In that small picture there, that's the live view. That's what the astronauts are really doing right now. They're all suited up in their launch suits, because they have to wear a special suit when you're launching in a rocket.
Guys, did you know that the people are going to widen a Tesla and NASA Tesla Model E? That is a cool one because it's got NASA.
And you know, Elon Musk runs both SpaceX and Tesla.
Yeah, I knew that already.
Oh, I can't believe how bad my hay fever is. It'll be better in a bit. We've still got 3 hours 23 minutes before the launch. That is so cool. That is the money shot for Tesla, isn't it? One thing is for sure, SpaceX has absolutely hit the big time now. I mean, wow. You know, they're very definitely a serious space company. So, the launch last night didn't go according to plan. They stopped the countdown at 16 minutes to liftoff, and that was it for the day. Rather annoyingly, especially as we'd sat through about 3 hours of really quite fun sort of little mini documentaries and interviews. There's lots of interesting stuff going on. Jasper he spent a lot of time on the phone, let's be honest, playing Minecraft, because, you know, he wanted to see the launch, the bit that didn't happen. Still, we'll tune in at 8:30 on Saturday, and hopefully it will launch then. That's what we're hoping. Yeah. Come on, SpaceX. Come on, weather. I mean, actually, the whole thing seemed to be going just fine. The problem was they were just slightly out on a few of their weather criteria. No idea what I'm going to do with this video now, because I tell you what, let's talk about why this is such a big thing. The thing about SpaceX and NASA and their partnership is it's part of Commercial Crew, which is a follow-on program from the Commercial Resupply. And the reason why these are good things is because, quite honestly, NASA's budget was barely going to enable them to get into orbit. If they had to design the actual launch vehicle themselves, they're not efficient at it. They're not efficient at it because they don't take the big risks. And that's where allowing some private industry to get involved can be really, really great for a government agency like NASA, because they can let other companies take the risks and then they buy the product that they want to use afterwards, or the service. So that's why I think that works, and it leads to a much better, because they've been using a lot of cost plus in the past, which basically is where you sign a contract with NASA that goes something along the lines of, provided it's reasonably reasonable, NASA will pick up the bill for everything, no matter what, for the rest of time. And obviously under those circumstances, there's not a lot of, how do I put it, incentive to be efficient with the way that you are, you know, doing your development. In fact, you just make sure you tick the boxes that NASA has to tick, which of course, because they're a government agency and, you know, human space flight is obviously something that is, you know, very critical to the lives of the astronauts. So, you know, they have a lot of boxes to tick and the companies just concentrate on ticking boxes. And provided they're ticking boxes, they can string it out for decades. I mean, just look at SLS. They have spent an unbelievable ton of money on that rocket, and it doesn't do anything new. 100% shuttle era technology. When they designed the shuttle, they could have built SLS. No problem. In fact, some of the bits on the SLS are basically straight off the shuttle, like the engines. Literally straight off the shuttle. So basically zero innovation whatsoever. Whereas you look at something like SpaceX with Starship, is that going to work? We don't know. It looks like the tanks are going to hold pressure, which is a good place to start, but there's so much that they've got to do and prove, and they're going to fail so many times as they change the design to try and make it work, because they're doing something which won't necessarily work, whereas NASA only ever does things which will definitely work, which means that there's no forward progress. The Falcon 9, that is not something that they could have designed with shuttle era technology. They just didn't have the computer systems. They didn't have the kind of real-time processing power necessary to control a vehicle like that re-entering through the atmosphere at supersonic speeds using grid fins and thrusters, and then do a pinpoint landing with an engine which has a higher thrust to weight ratio than 1 when that rocket's landing. So in other words, they've got to do that hover slam maneuver. They have to cut the engine at the exact point where both height and velocity are 0. Any more than that, if they light the engine a little bit too soon, what will happen is the rocket will just stop and then start going up again, which is why they couldn't build reusable rockets 50 years ago. Now we can, but we could still build the SLS 50 years ago. I mean, the whole thing is just, oh my word. So for NASA to be moving forwards with commercial crew after the success of commercial cargo, and now they're talking about commercial resupply for the Gateway space station that's going to be in orbit of the moon. Fantastic. SpaceX they've got a contract to do that using Falcon Heavy and the Dragon XL vehicle, which they haven't designed yet, but I'm sure they can knock that together in a few years. And then of course you've got the fact that Starship is in the running to be a lander for the moon, which I think is brilliant. And I've noticed that both the Dragon XL and the Starship lander concept have been approved for development funds from NASA, following on from a successful DM-1 mission and the successful parachute test. And basically, NASA getting to the point where they're going, you know what, this commercial crew thing's worked out all right, and the commercial resupply worked out all right. We've done very well out of those things. SpaceX has really become a sort of a tier 1 partner for NASA, where initially, in the early days of commercial resupply, I think it was a bit of a long shot, a bit of a, well, they're a private company that might be able to do something. Let's give them some cash and see what happens. And wow. Right, I've just realised I'm halfway through making Jasper's lunch. I better go finish that. God, they're off.
So rises a new era of American space.
My heart's really going.
Falcon power telemetry nominal.
Oh look, that's the picture from inside. They don't have a huge amount to do they?
Right now, everything continuing to look good. And we have Miko.
Right, there you go. Main engine cut off. There we go. So that's the second stage. There we go, and ignition. Boom. That's so what there. That's the first stage, looking up at that, which is the second stage, which is now going off into orbit, because the first stage is far too big to get to orbit on its own.
So they just drop it?
Well, no, this is SpaceX, so they land it.
Well, yeah.
Normal people drop it.
No.
Those guys are now doing 8,300 kilometres an hour.
Jeez.
And they've still got to put on another 20,000 kilometres to stay up there. 20,000 kilometres an hour, almost.
Really?
Yeah. But the second stage is now so light, and there's no air resistance at all because it's in space. So the whole thing is an order of magnitude more efficient than it was when they were on the surface.
Imagine what their body must be going through right now.
Yeah, I think they're experiencing about 2 Gs, and I think it'll end up at about 3.5 Gs when the second stage is empty. Hey Jasper, you see the grid fins? They pop out to help guide the first stage when it's coming back down. So the guys on the left that you can see in that picture, they're going to orbit. The thing on the right is the first stage booster. You know the first stage, the big bit at the bottom. That's coming back, and hopefully they're going to land it.
Are they going to blow it up?
Oh yeah, the whole thing is just totally mind-blowing.
What you're seeing on your screen is a live view of our drone
Seeing the rocket yet?
where our first
Oh,
stage
there we go.
is down.
That's the rocket.
Looks like we lost that live view, but we'll wait for confirmation of that landing shortly here.
There we go.
And
That's how they do
see on
that.
the screen,
That is the rocket that just launched then.
Dragon separation.
There you go.
there is a great
The trunk's
view
empty
right in
today.
front of you.
And it's the next morning. They're currently just approaching the space station in the Dragon capsule. There's something so incredible about the reality of it. I mean, just accelerating 2 human beings to that kind of speed whilst keeping their bodies alive by ensuring that G-forces and vibrations and stuff like that stay within survivable levels.
Soft capture complete.
The backup systems, the abort, all the people on the ground. The whole thing is just absolutely mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing. Most of that, I think, is probably sailing straight over Jasper's head. But hopefully at least a little bit of that awe and excitement is coming across for him, because I do think that space and science is something that people should be enthused about. Because I think it's the... Look, on a level with you, I think it's the future of humanity. I do not see how humanity can progress just on this planet. I mean, let's be honest. We've done a really rubbish job of fixing the problems on planet Earth while we're on planet Earth. What I suspect will happen is that we will build the technology necessary to live and work and travel in space and colonize other parts of this solar system, and maybe even eventually colonize other star systems. But along that journey, I'll just pause this. Sorry, I've got the live stream in the background. Along that journey, though, what I think will happen is that we will use the technology we've designed and built and created in order to achieve those space-related goals. We'll use that same technology on Earth to fix all of the problems we've got here. Also, quite honestly, I just want to be excited about the future. I think people work better when they're excited about the future. And that's one of the things that always drove me towards electric vehicles. Sorry about the pun. It felt like the future. It felt like something that actually did move humanity forwards, as opposed to a slightly more efficient petrol or diesel engine that might have actually just been a sort of cheat, and actually it's not more efficient. That doesn't really feel like it's moving humanity forwards. The obvious link back to space with that is this idea of reusable rockets. Obviously, getting into space when you have to build a whole rocket to do each one of those launches is going to be a complete no-go. And I mean, that's kind of like, okay, so the Falcon 9 is not fully reusable, but to be honest, it's probably about as reusable as the space shuttle was, at a tiny fraction of the cost, and it can be turned around and sent back into space that much easier and quicker, because it's just a better designed system. It's much, much more usable for the level of reusability that it has. The thing with the space shuttle is it was just so expensive to run and refurbish. It wasn't really reuse, it was refurbish every time. So that's my take on that. I'm super excited. I'm going to stay with this until they open the doors, and then I'm gonna say goodbye for the day. I hope you've all enjoyed today's video. If you have, remember to drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and maybe hit the notification bell if you want to not miss any future videos, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye.
So NASA did the greatest space. So NASA did the achievement of all achievements. My people go to the moon.
That's right, that was NASA. It was quite a long time ago though now.